This is going to be a quick video on atmospheric perspective. I'm using the drawing that I used for the fence post method. Now, so what we've looked at so far is linear perspective. We've looked at 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective. Those are all called linear perspective. There's also atmospheric perspective, which means how things are disappearing into the atmosphere. It has to do with shading and detail. So the things that are closest to you, like this tree, would have the darkest darks and the lightest lights, or the highest contrast. And as you go back in space, the detail is diminishing and the contrast is diminishing. So there's less contrast. Let's put some leaves on here. And the outline could be fuzzier or blurrier. As if it is disappearing into the atmosphere. So if there's shading on the tree, I'm trying to do this quickly, so it's just kind of a sketch to illustrate an idea. Okay. Say these leaves are kind of dark. And then if I go to a tree, I'm not going to do every leaf because that will take too long. But if I go to a tree that's a little farther back, I'm going to use a dark gray instead of a black, right? It's not as dark and it's also not as light. You would see less detail. And the lines might, as you go back in space, the outlines might become blurrier or fuzzier as they're fading into the atmosphere. Put some leaves here. And I did that on purpose just to not make them have as detailed of an outline. Then I'm going to use a lighter gray here. When you get really far into the distance, the trees will seem blurry. I'm just going to do 3 because just to illustrate my point, right? And then your leaves might be kind of seem like this. They're kind of harder to tell what they are in atmospheric perspective. Now, that's just a very simple illustration of it, but I hope you kind of get the idea. I'm going to get my black and come in even darker here and make like a really clear outline, right? And this would go for all parts of the tree. I'm just doing this as an illustration, so it's very basic. And then say like, maybe you see some like contour lines or cross contour lines on the tree, right? You see a lot of detail, or that's how you want to draw it. Here you may not see them, right? Because it's a little farther away, or they might seem fuzzier or not as distinct, right? Maybe you see them here too, but here you're not seeing them at all because it's farther away and it's disappearing into the atmosphere. That's atmospheric perspective. Some people like to combine both linear perspective and atmospheric perspective in a drawing to make the perspective stand out even more. And then, like, say here you're seeing trees, but you're kind of getting a hazy atmosphere in here, right? It's kind of a gray. This also pertains to color, but that's a different video or a different lesson. Since we're just working with black and white right now. So say this is the atmosphere right here. It's kind of the same value as this tree. And then you're seeing a tree right here. It's kind of almost really hard to see and hard to tell what it is. It's disappearing into the atmosphere, and it would get more and more blurry and faint as you go back in space in the distance towards the vanishing point. That is, again, atmospheric perspective, and you can combine both atmospheric perspective and linear perspective in a drawing. Just to enhance the linear perspective, you can also do a drawing that's only atmospheric perspective. It's used a lot in landscape painting.